Hello, beautiful Aquarius. Welcome back. Take one deep breath with me, because the energy coming through tonight is intense, revealing, and impossible to ignore. Aquarius, her evil eye just lost its power. Not because she changed, not because you gave her the reaction she wanted. No, your truth became too solid to bend. For a while, one cold look, one strange silence. One story whispered behind your back could sit on your chest for days. You felt the pressure, right? Even when you could not fully name where it was coming from. But wow, something just broke. The version of you she could exhaust, confuse, or force into defending yourself is no longer available to her. And that is exactly why the story she built around you is starting to crack. You did not expose her by becoming louder. You exposed her darkest plans by staying real, by staying consistent, and by continuing to show up with a heart that people can feel. Comment, I choose truth over fear, if this message found you at the right time. A gentle note, take this reading as spiritual reflection and entertainment, and always trust your own judgment in real-life situations, because these cards are showing a burden leaving your hands, a return to peace, and one bold new spark waiting beyond this chapter. But first, Aquarius. We need to see what she hoped would break you and why it is no longer working. And what she hoped would break you, Aquarius, may have been the very thing you were quietly rebuilding, your ability to feel safe again. Because the first card here is the Ten of Cups. Oh my God. Look at this. A rainbow stretched across the sky. 10 golden cups shining overhead. 2 people with their arms lifted. Children moving freely in the distance. This is not the image of someone defeated. This is the image of a life beginning to feel like home again. And maybe that home is not a house. Exactly. Maybe it is the moment you stop checking your phone with a knot in your stomach. Maybe it is a relationship where you no longer have to shrink to keep the peace. Maybe it is one friend who finally sees your heart without asking you to prove it. Maybe it is your family becoming warmer. Maybe it is your work becoming clearer. Maybe, honestly, it is simply waking up one morning and realizing you are not afraid of your own future anymore. That matters, Aquarius, more than you know, because there are people who can tolerate your sadness more easily than they can tolerate your healing. I am telling you, some people are comfortable when you are confused. They know how to relate to the version of you that apologizes too much, carries too much, gives too much. But when you become peaceful, when you stop needing their approval, when your life starts growing in directions they cannot control, that can bring up something uncomfortable in them. Not because you have done anything wrong, but because your peace becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see when they stand in front of a mirror, right? There may be a woman around this story, or simply a feminine energy that has been watching from a distance. Someone who can smile politely. Someone who can act unbothered. Someone who may never say directly what they feel. But you know that strange feeling, don't you? The room changes a little when they walk in. The conversation gets quieter. A compliment lands with a sharp edge hidden inside it. You share good news, and suddenly you feel like you have to explain why you deserve it. That kind of energy can be exhausting. And for a while, it may have made you question your own happiness. You may have thought, should I keep this private? Should I tone myself down? Should I stop celebrating? Should I make myself smaller so nobody has a reason to be upset with me? Listen, the Ten of Cups says no. Your joy is not an insult to someone else's pain. Your stability is not something you have to hide. Your loving connections are not evidence that you are lucky in a way others are not. They are evidence of what happens when you keep choosing truth, even after disappointment. They are evidence that your heart did not become cruel just because life gave you reasons to close it. And wow, there is something especially powerful here for you, Aquarius. You have a way of surviving quietly. You can carry a lot without telling anyone. You can make a painful season look organized from the outside. You can sit in a room full of people and still feel like no one understands the real weight you have been holding. But this card says that loneliness is not the final chapter. You are being shown the difference between attention and belonging. Attention can be loud. Attention can be jealous. Attention can watch every move you make. But belonging feels different. Belonging is the person who notices when your voice gets tired. It is the friend who does not compete with your joy. It is the relationship where you do not have to perform strength every second. It is the place where you can breathe without wondering who will use your softness against you later. Maybe there is one memory coming back to you now, a small one, a dinner table, a late night call, someone laughing with you so naturally that, for a second, you forgot all the heaviness, a day when you felt like yourself again. That is not a small thing, Aquarius. That is the thread. That is the proof that the darkness around you never owned the whole story. And basically, that is why the energy in the title is losing power. Not because you fought harder, not because you became colder, not because you turned your heart into a locked door. It loses power because there are now real people, real moments, real evidence of who you are. The more you let yourself receive love without suspicion, the less room there is for someone else's distorted version of you to survive. So let me ask you something gently. What part of your happiness have you been afraid to fully claim because you worried it might make someone else uncomfortable? Because there is a burden connected to that question. A burden you may have been carrying for far too long. And the cards are beginning to show exactly why you are not meant to carry it anymore. Because the next card does not arrive gently, Aquarius. It falls reversed. 10 of Wands, and wow, the image itself says everything. A figure is bent forward beneath 10 heavy wands. His hands are full. His vision is blocked. He cannot see the road clearly because he is carrying too much just to keep moving. But upside down, oh my God. This is the moment the load begins to slip. Not because you failed, because your spirit finally recognizes what your shoulders have been trying to tell you for a long time. This is too much. And some of it was never yours. You know that kind of exhaustion, right? Not the kind that sleep fixes. The kind that happens when you have replayed a conversation 50 times in your mind. When you have tried to understand why someone became distant without telling you why. When you have felt a shift in a room and immediately started asking yourself what you did wrong. You may have carried questions that did not belong to you. Why are they cold with me? Why did they believe that? Why do I have to explain my heart again? Why does every small thing feel like it could become a problem? And honestly, that is how emotional pressure works sometimes. It does not always come through a direct confrontation. Sometimes it enters through a look that lasts a second too long. A message passed through someone else, a person who suddenly knows something you never told them, a friendship that changes temperature for no clear reason. You begin to feel like you are walking through your own life with a glass of water balanced on your head. One wrong move, one wrong sentence, one misunderstood moment, and suddenly you are expected to clean up a mess you did not create. I mean, no wonder you have been tired. There may have been a point where you felt you had to become your own lawyer, your own witness, your own defense team. You tried to explain your intentions. You tried to keep the peace. You tried to give people the benefit of the doubt. And Aquarius, that says something beautiful about your heart, but guess what? A beautiful heart still needs boundaries. Because compassion without boundaries can turn into self-abandonment. You do not have to keep proving that you are not the person someone else decided to imagine. You do not have to carry every misunderstanding until it becomes a second identity. And you definitely do not have to become smaller just because another person feels threatened by the space you take up. The 10 of Wands reversed feels like that quiet moment when you finally set down a bag you have been carrying for miles. At first, you may not even realize how heavy it was. Your hands feel strange. Your shoulders still ache. You might even feel guilty for putting it down, like, wait, am I allowed to stop trying? Am I allowed to let people misunderstand me? Am I allowed to walk away without fixing every version of the story? Yes, Aquarius, you are. Because not every rumor deserves your energy. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every person who feels unsettled around you is asking for clarity. Sometimes they are asking for access. Access to your emotions, access to your explanations, access to the version of you that becomes so busy defending yourself that you forget to live. And that may be the real turning point here. You are no longer giving automatic access. Well, that is where the balance shifts. The person who expected you to keep chasing their approval may feel the distance now. The person who thought you would always rush in to repair the tension may notice that you are quieter but not defeated. Softer but not available for confusion. There is a difference, trust me. Silence can be fear, but silence can also be discernment. It can be the moment you decide that your peace is too valuable to place in the hands of someone committed to misunderstanding you. And by the way, this does not mean you become cold. It means you become clear. You can still be loving. You can still be generous. You can still be the person who sees the good in others. But you no longer volunteer to be the container for their chaos. That is not cruelty. That is emotional maturity. Maybe this card is asking you to notice one tiny habit. When somebody acts strange around you, do you immediately search yourself for the reason? Do you start reviewing your words before they have even told you there is a problem? Because, maybe that is the wand you are being asked to put down first. The need to assume responsibility for every shift in the air. The need to fix what was never honestly placed in your hands. And as these wands fall, something else becomes visible. Not just your freedom, the truth behind why you were carrying them in the first place. Because when you stop holding up a story that was never yours, the cracks in it become impossible to ignore. And once those cracks appear, Aquarius, people begin to see the light coming through them. Not all at once, not with a dramatic confession in the middle of a crowded room. Sometimes truth arrives in quieter ways. It arrives when someone notices that the version of you they were told about does not match the person standing in front of them. It arrives when a story gets repeated too many times, and somehow the details keep changing. It arrives when somebody who once listened without question starts to feel something is off, and wow, that is the energy I am feeling so strongly here. I am looking back at the 10 of Cups beside the 10 of Wands reversed, and honestly, this combination gives me chills, because one card shows the life you have been trying to protect, the warmth, the people who know your heart, the future you are still brave enough to imagine. And the other card shows what you are finally refusing to drag into that future. The weight, the confusion, the role of being blamed for things you did not create. Oh my God, this is not a coincidence. The truth about you is not rising because you forced everyone to choose your side. It is rising because you kept becoming more recognizable to yourself. That is different. You did not have to chase every whisper. You did not have to turn every painful moment into evidence. You did not have to become loud enough to compete with someone else's version of events. You simply kept living in a way that made the lie harder to hold. And that is when the story starts turning against the person who built it. Because a false picture needs constant maintenance. It needs new explanations, new people to convince, new reasons why you are supposedly the problem. But truth has a strange kind of stillness. Truth does not have to remember what it said last week. Truth does not panic when someone asks a question. Truth can stand in the same room, under the same light, and remain itself. So, Aquarius, there may be a detail coming into focus now. Something small, a timeline that does not make sense, a message that suddenly feels different when you read it again, a person who becomes nervous when a certain subject comes up, a kindness that now looks less like care and more like control. It can be unsettling when you first see that, because sometimes the hardest truth is not that someone disliked you. It is realizing they may have hidden that discomfort beneath a smile, a concern, or a story that made them look like the reasonable one. And listen, this reading is not asking you to become suspicious of everyone. Not every awkward silence has a hidden agenda. Not every distance means betrayal, but it may be inviting you to honor the moments when your spirit quietly says, something here is not aligned. There is a difference between fear and discernment. Fear makes you run in circles. Discernment lets you stand still long enough to notice what is true. That is where your power is now. Not in proving someone wrong, in seeing clearly. Because the more you see clearly, the less anyone can use confusion to move you around emotionally. And I think that is what this person may not have expected. They may have assumed you would remain stuck in reaction, that you would defend, over-explain, apologize for the atmosphere in the room, try to win back people who had already decided to misunderstand you. But you are not doing that in the same way anymore. You are learning that some doors close not because you failed to knock hard enough, but because they were never built to lead you somewhere safe. Wow. That truth can change everything. It can change the way you answer a text. It can change the way you tell your story. It can change the kind of people you allow near your private life. And it can change the way you look at the person who once made you feel small. Because eventually, Aquarius, you stop seeing them as someone with power over you. You begin seeing them as someone who needed to distort you because they could not face what your presence stirred inside them. That does not make their behavior okay. But it does release you from carrying their unrest as if it were your responsibility. And there is an emotional justice in that, not the kind that asks you to become bitter. The kind that lets consequences speak in their own language. The person who uses confusion eventually has to explain why nothing they said quite adds up. The person who keeps pulling people into tension eventually reveals how much tension they carry inside. The person who tried to control the room eventually realizes the room is no longer listening the same way, and you get to breathe. You get to return to the part of yourself that does not need a courtroom to know you are worthy. So let me ask you something softly. What would change in your life if you stopped waiting for everyone to understand you before you allowed yourself to move forward? Because I feel a new energy pressing at the edge of this reading now. Not another burden, not another explanation, something lighter, something that may remind you who you were before you had to become so careful. And then this Page of Wands appears, Aquarius. Oh my God. I had to pause when I saw this card. There is this young figure standing alone in an open landscape. The ground looks dry. The horizon is wide. Nothing around him is telling him exactly where to go, but he is holding one wand, and he is looking at it like it carries a message, like something inside him has just come alive again. That is you, Aquarius, not rushing back into the old noise, not standing there trying to prove that you are hurt enough, honest enough, worthy enough. No, you are beginning to feel that tiny spark again. The one that says, what if there is more for me than surviving this? What if I am allowed to be curious again? What if the next thing I create is not built around protecting myself from somebody else's misunderstanding? Wow, that question alone can change a life. Because sometimes healing does not arrive looking like a grand victory. Sometimes it arrives as a small desire. You suddenly want to take a class. You feel pulled toward a new idea. You start thinking about a trip. A message comes in that makes you smile. Someone invites you somewhere, and for once you do not automatically say no. Or maybe you sit down with your coffee one morning and realize you want to write again, paint again, apply again, love again, speak again. That is Page of Wands energy. It is the part of you that has not given up on the future. And honestly, Aquarius, after carrying so much emotional weight, that is a sacred thing. Because pain can make a person practical in all the wrong ways. It can convince you that hope is dangerous. It can make you believe that joy always comes with a cost. It can teach you to look at every new opportunity and ask, where is the hidden problem? But this card is not naive. The Page of Wands is not pretending the desert is a garden. He knows the ground is dry. He knows he is still at the beginning. But he holds that wand anyway. He sees potential where somebody else would only see emptiness. And I am telling you, that may be the most Aquarius thing about you. You can see possibilities before other people understand them. You can stand in the middle of an ending and still imagine a new system, a better life, a different way forward. You have always had that gift. Maybe it went quiet for a while. Maybe you had to tuck it away because the people around you made you feel like being excited was somehow too much. Like being original was inconvenient. Like having a vision made you difficult to control. But guess what? Your vision was never the problem. Your light was never the problem. The wrong people simply did not know how to stand near someone who could see beyond the walls they had accepted. And now, well, this is where your energy begins to move differently. You are not required to announce every plan. You do not need to hand your unfinished dreams to people who have not earned your trust. There is wisdom in keeping some things close while they are still becoming, like a seed under the soil. It does not need to defend itself. It does not need an audience. It just needs the right conditions. A little patience, a little protection, a little sunlight, and then one day it rises. So maybe this next chapter asks you to become more selective, not more closed. There is a difference. You can keep your heart open without giving everyone a map to it. You can be kind without becoming available for every emotional emergency. You can share your good news without waiting for someone else to approve it, right? That is not selfishness. That is self-respect with a pulse. And I want to say something very gently here. The person who tried to make you question yourself may have wanted you to stay emotionally stuck in the version of your life where they still had access to your attention. But every time you choose your own next step, you take that access back. Every time you create something, every time you say yes to a new possibility, every time you stop looking over your shoulder before you smile, you are reclaiming your future. Not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with movement, with courage, with a life that keeps opening. And maybe that is the deepest kind of emotional justice, not watching someone else fall, but realizing you no longer need their fall in order to rise. Aquarius, what is one small invitation life has been placing in front of you that you have been afraid to accept? A call, an idea, a door you keep pretending you do not see. Because this Page of Wands says there may be something waiting on the other side of your hesitation, something that does not ask you to shrink, something that does not ask you to explain your worth, something that meets you where your spirit is ready to go. The past may have taught you how to be careful, but it does not get to decide how brightly you live from here, and that is why her shadow cannot define you anymore. You are not walking back into the darkness to argue with it. You are walking toward the first light of a life that finally feels like your own. And maybe that is the surprise in all of this, Aquarius. Her power did not disappear because you finally defeated her. It faded because you stopped feeding the part of the story that made you doubt your own place in the world. From where I am sitting with these cards, this was never only about one person watching you with envy, speaking indirectly, or trying to make you carry discomfort that belonged to them. This was about the moment you realized that peace is not something people hand you after they understand you. Peace is something you protect by becoming honest about who gets access to your heart. That is the lesson I want you to keep. Not everyone who knows your history deserves a seat in your future. Not everyone who smiles at your success is safe enough to hear your next dream. And that is not bitterness. That is wisdom. 10 of Cups showed the love and belonging still available to you. 10 of Wands reversed showed the weight you were never meant to carry forever. And Page of Wands showed the beautiful part, Aquarius. Your life is not ending at the point where someone misunderstood you. It is beginning again at the point where you choose movement over explanation. So comment, I release what was never mine to carry, if this message spoke to your spirit tonight. And subscribe if you are ready for more messages that help you protect your peace without losing your softness. The journey continues, Aquarius, because the next message may reveal what this new spark is trying to lead you toward.